Are we having the right kind? Because it would seem that from your explanation, the closer government is to the people, the more development will come to them. So what we have is a situation where people keep agitating for more states. Yes. An example is what we can see at the end of the national conference, where 18 states were approved. I mean, this is from...
recommended.
Yes, well, recommended, at least from delegates at the national conference. Yeah. We don't know how it's going to do at the National Assembly. We understand that the number that was agitated for was over 30. So we have to ask, you know, are we really looking at whether this is the right approach in terms of, should we be looking at state creation or should we be looking at empowering the local governments, which are the ones that are closest to the people? From your experience, what would you be advising?
If you ask me, if you tell me my personal opinion, I was a member of the Constitutional Conference before this republic. If you ask me then I would say a two-system will be better for this country. But today, as it is,
a two-tier system.
A two-tier system, and then.
What is a two-tier system you'd be recommending?
At that time, in 1994-95, I would have preferred a two-tier system.
Which will be?
It would have been state and
federal.
No local government.
No local government.
Has that changed today?
To some extent, I think so. Why? Because as at that time, I was looking that if you go to local government, most of the people that go to the local governments, if they were doing a lot in their local governments, the state will have less to do. They will have less to do. Because the type of funding that goes to the local government, if the local governments that you now say are closer to the people really do their job as it ought to be done, we have less to do at the state. I always try to narrow it down to my state because I'm here. Today, most of the functions of the state, if the state government under Udwara had not decided to also go down to carry out some functions, nothing would have been done. If you look at it...
Well, in fairness, I mean, a lot of people say, we've asked several state governments, they keep saying that that's not being fair to the local governments in terms of the funding that the local governments get. And so sometimes what you find is that they are only acting in capacity with what they have. In your assessment, would that be it?
No. Look at sanitation, for instance. They are supposed to be involved in clearing the waste in their areas. If you go to most of the local governments today, in Delta, for instance, government of Delta have to set up even an interventionist agency to manage the clearing of waste, which ought to have been the function of the local governments. So the funds that are supposed to be used for something else at the state level is being used to carry out functions in some of the local governments.
Should we not have one tier of government?
Is it a question of funds or a question of capacity? Because if you ask, some people might say it's because we're trying to centralize how it is we manage refuse collection, that it has to be central. Would you agree with them?
Central?
Yes.
If it's central, how will the state or federal go down to a local government like Burutu? Have you been to Burutu? Have you been there? No. To go and clear waste in Burutu. If it's central. And you have a local government headquarters in Burutu. How will the state government go to a place like, well, you may know Saple, go to a place like Saple and clear waste there? But because if the state does not go, we now have problems. So the state, for instance, had to set up an interventionist agency to manage the clearing of waste.
What did they help out in developing the capacity of the local governments to perform those functions?
If they didn't have the capacity, that would have not been function of the local government in the Constitution.
From your experience, if you look at government because whether or not you like it, there is some bureaucracy involved. When a new state is created, there has to be a capital, there has to be a new civil service established to service that particular state. How would you say that the running of government, the cost of running government, compares with the development that eventually accrues to that particular state? Would you
In
say
my
that
opinion,
it is
let me
balanced?
just tell you.
Yes.
I don't like hearing this word of state creation, state creation, state creation. True. Because I know that even the number of states we have today, we've not been able to manage them. True. Because if you look at the allocation that go to the states, federal as of today cannot even cope. So why do we create more states? That's my opinion.
You just
It is interesting. Sorry, Chairman Nyota. It's interesting you brought that up because from the National Conference, more states, they agitated for more states, which were recommended, at least in the final report. But it was also interesting to note that they also approved more funding for the local governments as well.
Where did you get the money?
That question wasn't fully addressed, was it?
That's why I just asked you. So was this addressed by the National Constitutional Conference?
It gives you cause for concern.
It gives all of us cause for concern.
You know, one other thing that affects development, maybe, you know, you say you don't like hearing state creation, but people are talking about electricity supply. But ever since that privatization, how would you say that has affected or played out in Delta?
I think Delta, when it comes to Delta, in terms of you see, we have our own generating whatever year, government year. You see, these are part of the developments that are taking place all over time. Government here has put in a lot of money, both to federal, to enable us to take off here. If you look at Okpai, just here, government put in money. So we generate more electricity here before even the privatization in Abuja. So these are measures that government of Okwaga has put in place before now, which was not here before.
Chief, okay, you say you generate more power here. Is it part of the national grid?
Yes.
Let's look at the road infrastructural development. You were saying something about Delta State has changed. Asaba, state capital, has changed. And you have
not only Asaba. Not only Asaba.
Not only Asaba.
Not only Asaba.
I was coming to that. You said you have major cities around.
Yeah.
Around Delta State that have been transformed by reason of the creation. Yeah. So let's look at the major cities like Warri and
Sapele. Really.
How would you say it's been like infrastructural development in these areas?
I think from the time we came into Delta State and now is better than before. We have more road networks. We have more schools developed. More children go to school now. As of today, we have an airport in Delta State, which was not here before. We now have dualized roads in Delta State, which was not here before.
Let's go back to the issue of the more youths go to school. You said here that you were the youngest, you're amongst the youngest member of the House of Representatives representing Bendel State. Yeah. What's the plan of the Delta State government for the youth development?
If you look at Delta State today, as of today, you find out that more youths not only attend school, but more youths are even in government. Yeah. If you look at the local councils today, youths are the people that man those councils. Government of Delta State has given so much room to youths, and we have this youth development program, youth empowerment program in Delta State, which was not there then.
What kind of youth empowerment program is that?
You see, as at today, we have more youths that are being trained. Only recently, we sent a lot of them to Trinidad and Tobago for training. And when they come back, they will definitely be placed.
What will be your last word to Deltans at this occasion of its 23rd anniversary?
My message to Deltas is that so far I want to thank them for all they've done, and I want them to give more support, total support, their commitment, full commitment to the government of Dr. Emmanuel Eweta Oduagha for all he's been able to do for us so far, and all that he will still do in the next few months, so that at the end of the day, this government will finish strong.
All right, Chief Paulinus Akpeki, Commissioner for Housing, thank you for coming on this morning.
Thank you.